All right, so I'm Jerry Olla. Work for a Wi-Fi tools vendor, so I thought it might be appropriate to talk about a Wi-Fi toolkit and what wireless professionals have in their Wi-Fi toolkit. So I kind of focused this presentation around thinking through my time in the field and doing designs and troubleshooting, surveying, validations, those kind of things, and what tools I saw as kind of critical components to a Wi-Fi toolkit, and not so much the specific tools when it comes to vendors. I didn't want to make this about this tool is the best type of thing, but the categories of tools that we need as wireless professionals to do our job, to provide us the visibility, that kind of thing. So yeah, let's kind of dive into this with that kind of preference in mind. All right, so what is the most important tool? So I actually raised this question recently on the Wi-Fi Pros Slack channel and got some interesting responses on there. So speaking of tools, Wi-Fi, the Slack is a great tool for collaboration with wireless professionals. So if you're not on there, I encourage you to get on there. The Wi-Fi Pros Slack, you can hit up Sam on Twitter is a good place to get an invite onto that. But yeah, pose the question on there, what are the most important tools that you need to do your job? And, we have somebody actually in the audience that came back with a really, great response out there of, simply a brain is all you need apparently to be a Wi-Fi professional. And I think the responses after that were people reaching out to Jake to see if his brain was available for rent. And I'm not sure if you took any offers up there or not, or where that went, but yeah, it turned into an interesting conversation, let's say. So yeah, that's kind of, I kind of reached out to the community to find out what kind of tools they prefer and what do they feel are the important tools to do their job. A lot of tools to choose from, right? So yeah, let's talk about that. There's some tools, that we find are more useful than other tools, right? I mean, some you have multiple purposes for, some it's kind of a single purpose, some you maybe use very often, some you don't use hardly at all. But yeah, some tools are definitely more useful than others, right? In more ways than one, right? Nothing against, the person. We're talking about the tools here, right?
Which tool is that?
You can take it however you want, but just some tools are more useful than others is the point. All right, so yeah, let's get into the different types of Wi-Fi tools then. This is this is kind of one of those probably opinionated things and somewhat of a terminology thing, but this is how they make the most sense to me, is kind of breaking them down into these 5 main categories. So we'll kind of dig through each one of these here and kind of talk about what these tools are used for and how you'll use them throughout different projects that you'll be working on with Wi-Fi. So yeah, first talking about like the discovery tool. We'll get into that more, but I'll kind of just pound through each of these categories and then we'll dive into each one a little deeper here. So you also have planning tools, and then you're going to have validation tools. And then you'll also have monitoring tools as well as your troubleshooting tools when things go wrong, right? All right, so let's talk about discovery tools a little bit. What does discovery tools mean? To me, a discovery tool is something that's, going to gather some information about the RF environment, the Wi-Fi, wireless access points that are nearby, probably commonly more referred to as like a Wi-Fi scanner, right? Something that's going to use typically like the internal adapter on the device that you're using as a Wi-Fi scanner. It could be something as simple as a mobile phone. It could be a dedicated handheld, Wi-Fi scanning tool, as well as just an application that you run on a Mac or a PC. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get these kind of discovery tools, and really at a basic level, they're scanning all the channels that are available to us, and they're reporting back information about the environment, right? Pretty basic. I think everybody in here, show of hands, how many of you guys have some type of Wi-Fi discovery tool in your tool belt? Okay. We're in the right place, right? So yeah, let's kind of continue down the rabbit trail. We won't spend too much time in there. I think you guys are pretty familiar with discovery tools. But some of the benefits there: low cost, quick, easy to use. Some considerations there, almost like limitations of it, right? So it's only giving you a snapshot at that point in time in that location of the building, and because of that, it doesn't really scale very well, right? You're just taking a single snapshot where you are. If you got to cover 1 million square feet and make sure there's good Wi-Fi everywhere, a discovery tool isn't going to scale for that type of purpose. So kind of the purpose, the point of that is, different tools for different jobs, right? All right, so now let's talk about planning tools. Planning tools determine the optimal number of access points, the types of antennas that you want to deploy, or what is the best type of antenna for the type of environment that you're planning for, as well as optimal locations that each access point should be installed in, heights, angle of tilt, that kind of thing. So yeah, all types of environments as well. You could have 3D environments, you could have multiple floors. Those kinds of things. Benefits, though, really, the goal is to provide better Wi-Fi, right, through these planning tools, but also to save money, save time. How do we save money by using, spending the time to do planning? Reduce the cost of the equipment, right? If you can reduce the number of access points, could reduce the number of switches that are needed. Full circle there. You can save a lot of money on the equipment side. The time side, you can save a lot of time troubleshooting, right? So instead of just deploying it, we can go back to the planning. Some considerations there, though, is, what are does the planning tool also have survey capabilities? Is there capacity planning capabilities? What kind of training options are available? These planning tools can get very complex very quickly, especially when you're factoring in a lot of these other details. So then we get into the validation tools. Those are your typical site survey tools, but validation is a really wide category. What do we need to validate? Do we need to validate throughput? Do we need to validate packet loss and round trip time, those kind of performance metrics? Or is it specifically validating that we have enough signal strength? Some benefits there, being able to visualize the network from the client's point of view is a common kind of use case or benefit of those validation tools. Reveal problem areas. Also to establish a baseline, right, is a big reason why we need to use these validation tools, perform those post-deployment site surveys that Ferne was talking about earlier. Also be able to discover, maybe there's physical changes that have happened in the environment. We're seeing a lot more of this kind of proactive survey now. It's not so much of a reactive of just going out because there's users complaining, but maybe surveying specific areas, specific departments where the Wi-Fi is becoming critical enough to make sure that there's no changes happening in the environment that may impact the RF. But yeah, also to be able to discover misconfigured or malfunctioning equipment, right? So being able to map that out and be able to collect that information and be able to see, hey, when we initially surveyed this, it had these kind of configurations on it. Now when we surveyed it a month later, 6 months later, all of a sudden the channels, have changed, the channel width. There's some kind of change that happened here that we weren't aware of. Some considerations, though, on the validation tools, potentially need multi-adapter support. If you're covering large, geographic areas, large buildings, multiple adapters can be beneficial there. And also being able to do multiple types of surveys. So if we need to validate not only the, signal strength, but also the spectrum and things like throughput or some kind of network performance, having a tool that can gather all that information together is going to be valuable. Then we've got monitoring tools. Those are your dashboards, those different things that are going to provide you alerts when things go wrong. So that's kind of that, measurement of, detecting things and alerting you, hopefully before the users do, kind of staying on top of some of that kind of stuff. But yeah, benefits there, on the notification side, but also visibility from the AP's point of view. We talked about on the validation side, that's typically that site survey, boots on the ground, collecting that data from the AP's point of view. But now we're talking about from the client's point of view, now we're talking on the monitoring side, you're providing that other end of the spectrum of the AP's point of view, which, both are beneficial, right, to be able to see both sides of that. Also being able to track that and see trends over time. If you're having high increases of utilization, can be good for proactively monitoring for, do we need to add additional APs to a specific area of a building, change configurations because you're seeing these trends happening over time. Maybe seeing slowly, numbers of clients increasing in specific areas of a building. But yeah, you've got considerations there. Is it do you deploy an on-premise solution or is it some kind of cloud-based solution? Also, yeah, do you deploy just like the vendor solution of the equipment that you're installing, or do you use some kind of third-party monitoring system that can cover a wide array of vendors? All right, so let's move on to my favorite one, which is the troubleshooting tools. I broke this down into two different categories. You've got spectrum analyzers, and we'll talk about packet analyzers. So in the spectrum analyzers, what is it used for? Most commonly, you think of, when you think of spectrum analyzers, you think of something that can detect interfering sources. You use it to locate, mitigate those non-802.11 interference sources. But also another side of it is, especially as Wi-Fi becomes more critical, having that spectrum analysis to be able to determine how utilized a channel is. Are you using the best channel configuration? It can be really helpful on the kind of health of the spectrum view as well. So not just for interfering sources, but also from an RF energy standpoint, what does the health of that spectrum look like? But yeah, benefits there, provide that layer 1 visibility. So that's that physical medium that we're using over Wi-Fi. So, without it, we're really kind of taking shots in the dark, if you will, on issues because we don't have visibility to that layer 1. So we may be able to get the problem resolved eventually, but if it's a layer 1 issue, it may take several tries before we can, alleviate that issue, where if we had a spectrum analyzer, could visualize the exact problem, we know exactly what to do to fix it. Yeah, also good for maintenance, right? Like I was talking about, that proactive, like doing those site surveys, now being able to do the maintenance of, keeping the RF environment clean, removing those sources of interference, rogue devices, those kinds of things. Some considerations there if you're looking for, considering purchasing like a spectrum analyzer. Look at things like sweep speed, resolution, bandwidth. Those can vary pretty drastically and typically kind of, tie in with the pricing of that as well. And then just, what is the output that the hardware, it's a hardware software solution, right? So what does the hardware work with on the software side and what kind of information can you get out of that? All right, so let's talk about packet analyzers here. So what is a packet analyzer used for? So this is, if you haven't done packet analysis, this is to intercept Wi-Fi traffic, 802.11 frames, and be able to use that to troubleshoot difficult wireless connectivity issues, roaming issues, but also even for optimizing a wireless network, figuring out what a device's capabilities are. Anybody do anything with packet analysis today to be able to kind of create a device profile, right? How many of you guys are familiar with clients.mikealbano.com website? All right, so a handful you guys are. If you haven't checked that one out, that's the best database that I found of it, and that's literally what the database is a bunch of packet captures. That's all that information about the clients is decoded for you already, put into a nice database. But yeah, it's clients.mikealbano.com. Mike's done a great job of keeping that updated, and you can submit your own devices and stuff to the database if they're not on there already. So yeah, benefits there, resolve those difficult Wi-Fi issues, packet level visibility. Again, we talked about the spectrum analysis, giving you that layer 1. Now we're talking about that packet level visibility on here. So it's all about kind of digging through those different layers, and each tool kind of provides you different layers of visibility. But yeah, capture device capabilities. You can calculate channel utilization. Some considerations there looking at packet analyzers is, is it provide you live packet analysis, or is it, just where you capture and then you analyze post? So there's a lot of different packet analyzers out there. You have Wireshark, on the free end of the spectrum to, very, more expensive packet analyzer tools out there as well, and things all in the middle as well. So lots of options there when it comes to the software side. The hardware gets a bit trickier. That's where you have to have the right adapters to be able to put into that monitor mode to be able to capture these frames. Anybody try and do like some multi-adapter captures to, typically to do like roaming? Andrew, I bet, yeah, sure you've done some of that. Yeah, so I mean, especially if you're doing voice, this is going to be a really critical tool to have in your tool belt, and you're going to get very familiar with these types of tools, and having multiple adapters and stuff to really analyze everything that's going on for that device. All right, so let's dive into the demo kind of portion here. How are we doing on time, Keith?
13 minutes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I decided to do a little live demo because, you know, it's always fun getting in front of a group of, you know, technical people and seeing if we can, you know, make things work in a live demo. All right, so I set up this little lab here. As you can probably see, I got all these cables and stuff going on. So kind of walk you through this real quick. The lab that I've got set up is a little mock wireless router, you know, switch. Kind of think of this as your infrastructure, right? So we've got the whole infrastructure kind of put together here with this little router, wireless. We've got a WLAN Pi connected to that to do some performance testing. And then I've got a Sidekick connected here so we can analyze the spectrum live while we do this. So during the lunch here, I just did kind of a baseline test so we can kind of look at that. So you can see my baseline test. This router is only has a 10100 port on there, so that's going to be a bottleneck. We're not going to get over 100, but you can see, you know, we're getting about 70 megabits per second. Make sure I'm still connected to it. So what I'm going to do is run a speed test. This is a speed test going from my laptop here that we're connected on, and I'm going to run it through the MikroTik router to the endpoint that's plugged into our network. And what that's going to do is tell me some, and this is doing the graph speed test, so this is going to give me an over-the-time view so we can kind of see this happening. But what I wanted to show you guys is, okay, so we're watching this now in a comparison. On the right, you've got the spectrum analysis happening, and we can see we're on channel 149 is the channel that we're connected on, and that's this shape over here. And then we've got the speed test running here, doing an upload and download speed test, and we can see the, you know, we're using 40 or 80 megahertz wide channels, right? We can see the utilization on those. Actually, if I go over to here and we actually flip this over to channels, we could actually look at the channel utilization. So now that speed test just finished, let me start a new one here, and we can actually watch the channel utilization go up on there. So yeah, here's the channel utilization if we're watching channels 149, probably pretty small to see in the back of the room there, but I'm seeing about 50% utilization. Remember, our bottleneck is our router. It can't pump out more than 100 megabits per second. Our Wi-Fi can actually do a lot more, so we're not saturating the connection. But the other piece that I wanted to show you was, you know, what happens when we, you know, have some type of interference, you know, show up on the network. I've got a little video transmitter here, pretty low power, but we're in close proximity. I think somebody talked about that earlier today about the proximity that you are to the source of the energy, right, is the important part. I think it was Troy or somebody was talking about that earlier where, you know, with the ripples, he was talking about that, and that's what it's all about, right? So this is close to the receiver. So even though this is a lower powered device, the important part is that it's close to the receiver. So here we can see that hopefully showing up, you know, pretty clearly to me. Hopefully you guys can see that in the back of the room. See that fine kind of line there? That's a little video transmitter that I have here that's just battery powered. Now right now, this isn't on channel 149, right? I think we can get it close to that with a channel change on here. And I want to see, there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to shut that off, and we're going to restart our speed test so we can see this kind of graphed over time, and I'm going to connect my video transmitter, and we'll see if we notice any impact to our performance. So this little guy is doing that much damage to our network. This is a 25 milliwatt transmitter. But that close proximity to your client is the important factor. And if this was a higher output transmitter, which this is very low power in comparison to a lot of stuff that we'll see in the real world, you can see what that just did to my client's performance. And actually, yeah, it looks like it disconnected me altogether. I'm no longer connected to that network. So it basically jammed the channel. Even though that was an 80 megahertz wide channel, and I wasn't even parked on one of the channels, now you can see the spectrum just kick back up there as soon as I unplugged it there. But yeah, so you can see the impact that has there. Cool, well that's all I had for you guys today. Appreciate the time.